I've been thinking about comic books and the industry and the culture, and the more I think about it, the more I just can't get past the hypocrisy that seems to just permeate this culture and all parts of this industry. And I find it strange because this is a business that tells the best of us, or it tells these idealistic stories, these great power comes great responsibility. Not just Kate books, but all books. It's about overcoming evil and triumphing over unspeakable odds, and that you can make a difference. And yet, the industry that produces this, it often comes off as petty and hypocritical. All sides of it. Why is that? Hey everybody, this is Perch. No sides in all this, just some thoughts, because I don't think any group or any institution really has a high moral ground in any of this, or the moral high ground, I guess. Got that backwards. It's often everywhere, but the peculiar part is that we see on the page the people we should be in a lot of cases. Maybe not as much recently, but definitely in comics. I remember when Mark Millar, he first started doing some of his comics, and there was a pushback. There's people who hate him because he writes these stories that show a grittier side or a distasteful side. I remember his authority. He got a lot of criticism for both the way he handled villains, but also the heroes having kind of dark aspects to them. It's like Mark Millar kind of ruins comics. Was the comic? I don't agree with that whatsoever. But people know enough about the people they want to be to recognize when the heroes on the page aren't behaving that way. And I mean, it's just look at throughout the industry right now. And I want to talk very briefly about the problem. Hopefully everybody sees it. So I'm not going to give too many examples. I can, but I don't want this to be a drudgery, depressing video. More about, how do we intercept it? How do we stop it? A lot of these stories that we're hearing about harassment, whether they're criminal or they're just creepy or wrong, it's telling that a lot of these creators write these stories about defending women or children or being heroes, and why heroes is tough, and you have to set a good example and everything else. But then they're doing kind of weird manipulative stuff. I'm not talking about the people that whether somebody's too flirtatious or not too flirtatious. I mean, like hanging jobs over people's head in exchange for favors, or kind of these allegations recently, and some of the messages we've seen are just outright racist. Not like everybody's a racist, but actually like using the words, keeping people from getting employed because of their skin color, that kind of stuff. Where you see examples of that, it's like, how can you sit down and publish a comic about heroes and then turn around and do some of this stuff? You at some point you have to look in the mirror and say, I'm the Lex Luthor of this story. I'm not Superman. I think, and across the board, I think the comments, whatever's truth or not, about Mark Wade's various kind of shenanigans, the sending the dark wreath to somebody, to kind of mock them over what's going on, to make fun of their deceased wife. You can't say. I mean, he's given quotes saying, we're supposed to be superheroes, we're supposed to be protecting women, we're supposed to be, the best of ourselves, and yet, when you're doing this stuff, when you're throwing items off the table, do you see any comics where Superman is like, throwing his table around, or he gets mad because somebody spills some coffee in the Daily Planet, or he comes in, he's just mad because somebody took his parking space, so he just throws his chair across the room or punches a wall? This isn't passionate people. These are villains. And I think it's just over and over we see this kind of hypocrisy. And then it's other things too. It's not just social matters. It's like, we see a lot of retailers comment about Diamond, and about how DC leaving Diamond was a betrayal, that DC needed to just stick with Diamond, that wandering off is killing the industry, that people are sociopaths for even considering to do something other than Diamond. And you see these very angry, very impassioned pieces out there. And then, then a couple weeks later, I mean, not like years later, but a couple weeks later, you get like Brian Hibbs talking about how, the first time he was able to get books outside of Diamond, he's a graphic novel business. The second he was able to get them from somewhere else, he did it. He did so. I mean, his exact quote coming out of his mouth was, "I haven't bought any graphic novels that I didn't have to from Diamond in something like a year and a half." Yet weeks earlier, he was talking about how DC leaving Diamond was the deepest betrayal, and it was like the red wedding of the industry. Like, again, can you see yourself? A lot of, and I won't go into the specific names because I'm not informed about it. But when a lot of people broke off from the big two, and you saw this kind of fan revolt against comics, and they say, we're going to do crowdfunding, we're going to do our own thing because we don't want gatekeeping, we don't want this kind of these purity tests, we don't want any of this stuff. And then a few months later, you've got you're not saying, you're not using the right hashtag, or you're not coming on this show or that show, or you're kind of bombing somebody and trying to keep them out of the business. You're smearing someone. I mean, a lot of you decided to make your own comics specifically because you didn't like kind of this dirty, nasty attack behavior, and yet here we are. Why? And again, there's almost always a reason. There's some detail, there's some nuance why the hypocrisy matters. Maybe for Brian Hibbs, it's like, no, I'm just one small retailer. I'm just one shop. That's just me. I'm not the comic industry. If I was dealing in new comics and everything else, I never would have strayed from Diamond because that's the right thing to do. I mean, you can always justify things. Maybe the people in the comic industry who are the harassers, who are doing some of this stuff, is like, hey, I work hard all day, and I need to blow off a little bit of steam. I need to grope this woman because I work hard. Haven't I earned it? I once heard somebody, not in comics, but a completely different field, once use that excuse. It's like, hey, why did you sleep with that prostitute? Why did you go down to tech conferences, and especially when they're in Vegas, there's lots of prostitution there that you can get your hands on, no pun intended. And this guy is I finally was fed up. He talked about his wonderful wife and his daughter and all this stuff, and she's going off to college, and oh man, this is so great, and just really proud of her and everything else. Yet he was very publicly got a prostitute during the show, and as he's going on about his daughter and everything else, I say, and me being kind of blowing my steam a little bit, it's like, you were effing a girl the age of your daughter last night. How does that fit into your the perfect family? Is what he kept calling it. I have the perfect family, which includes, you say, I have the perfect family, which includes me. It's like, okay. I said, how does that fit your perfect? You're banging some girl that was your daughter's age. Is that part of the perfect family? And he gets all pissed, and he's like, you know how hard I work. You see me. You know how hard I work. You don't think I deserve this? You don't think that a guy who works this hard doesn't deserve it? And fortunately, I was there with my buddy, and my buddy's like, no, that's not the same thing at all. You don't earn, getting a prostitute. That's not an earned thing. You do it, you don't, you accept it, you own it, or you don't. You don't try and justify that you're the perfect family man, and then you work really hard. Your reward, your in-game purchase is a prostitute. What the hell? It doesn't make any sense. I look at comics, and I think, what strikes me is just, and here's my solution. I spent way too much time on the examples. Actually, did exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. I think that we are in a business where we either write, draw, sell, produce, distribute, read some of the best of us, some of the best adventures of ourselves. I'm not talking about that Wasp comic. I'm talking about the other ones. We reread some of the greatest examples of heroism. There's Spider-Man, even though he may die, pushing up as he's crushed, to save a life, rising to the occasion, facing certain death. Heroes that boldly go in knowing this could be their last moment, but it's the right thing to do. It's what must be done, even if it's saving one life or millions of lives. There's so many comics. You can go into a comic shop, you can go into a bookstore, you can go anywhere, and you can just immediately almost close your eyes, just grab things at random and get great stories of heroes. And so maybe the solution is, reacquaint ourselves with those stories. I have met creators lately who don't read comics anymore. They said the argument is, I don't want to be influenced by something in the business. I can't help myself. I'll start to take some of those stories and those ideas. So I read outside. I read books. Now, first of all, I think that's a weird. It doesn't really matter if you're stealing from one place and the other. I don't know. That doesn't hold up. But read some of these stories of heroes. Remind yourself what a hero is. When I hear people, whether it's and again, I'm not saying whether Mark Waid's a good guy or a bad guy. That's up to you. You're the person who gets to make that decision. But we do know, we have admitted that, for example, Mark Waid, sat over and edited a comic that made fun of a guy who killed his wife that he may or may not have been involved with. We don't know that part, but we do know for a fact that he did it, and he admitted to it. And he's like, yeah, it's probably a lousy thing to do. I got fired. If you know it's a lousy thing to do, why did you do it? And more importantly, did you learn your lesson? Everybody deserves to make a mistake, but do you do it over and over and over and over again? And if you're accepting who you are, if you're the kind of person that's going to make those mistakes over and over again, maybe don't go out on a limb and talk about the way that everybody needs to be a hero. Maybe change up your pitch a little bit. Maybe what you want to say is, I'm not a hero, but the rest of you should aspire to be heroes. Or I've come up short in my life. Use me as an example of how to do it better. I don't know, lots of ways you could do it, but that's what we should aspire to. We should aspire to be better. And I think the example, the template, the mentorship is right in front of us, the comic. And if you're a fan who's gotten so frustrated, like me, over some of the hypocrisy, don't turn around and try and recreate it. Don't abandon comics and say, I'm done with mainstream comics. There's so many people writing my comments. I'm so glad I walked away from mainstream comics. Cool. You're feeling better about how you spent your money. But if the reasons you walked away, don't make those what you normally do. Don't try and recreate a bad system. We all know it. I mean, for better or worse, we have lots of examples of what to do, what not to do. And that's one of the gifts of comics right now, is it's all on the page. It's in front of us. And when we do wrong or when we make a mistake, admit it. We don't need to go into the details. I've made plenty of mistakes, many, many mistakes. I mean, example of one. I for many months said, I won't monetize this channel. I hate it. I hate the monetization. And then here we are, and there's ads in the front. Now, I can certainly sit here and go, well, I did the most minimal possible ads. And I can say, I had to do it because if I didn't do it, I was getting kind of deprioritized from YouTube, and there's stuff wasn't showing up. And I can certainly make those excuses. And there's some truth, by the way, to everything I just said. But the reality is, I did something I said I wasn't going to do. And I'll take the knocks for that. I don't like that I've got the ads. Still don't like them today. But I can't deny, turn them off. What do you know? 1,500 subscribers and suddenly I'm showing up in search engine. So I guess that's what it takes. So you know what? I will, I sit here humbly before you. I made a mistake. I'll own it. I said something I couldn't keep. That's no good. So I have to do better next time. And I think if everybody within the industry just tries to pause, take a moment, recognize we are still going to make mistakes, we are flawed, and own it, and just try and do better next time. And just honestly try. Don't sit here huffy and tell everybody else where they're wrong. Don't try and defend your mistake by pointing the finger at everybody else. Just own it. I think that's how we crawl out of this. And I think it can be done. I think it can be done quickly, as I have hope. I'm that naive, hopeful idiot that people sometimes talk about in the comics. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Leave some comments below. Probably a lot of heavy stuff on you, but love to know your thoughts on this whole topic. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook at Comic Perch. But most importantly, and I know it's kind of the way I wrap this up, but I really do mean it. Thanks for listening.